to our latest video that we've produced here at Circle Cloud. My name's Thomas Robertson, and today I'm going to be giving you a high-level overview of Azure Site Recovery, the Microsoft product that allows you to replicate your servers to Microsoft Azure Cloud and also to your own data centers as well. So just a quick sort of overview of what I'm going to be covering. First, I'm going to be covering a typical disaster recovery scenario, discussing the advantages and also the challenges with what we currently use for our disaster recovery. Then we're going to take a look at the Azure Site Recovery scenario from a technical perspective. What are the benefits to sort of using the product and how does it work? Then I'm going to talk quickly about support scenarios from Microsoft, so which technologies can we use it with, and what sort of configurations can we use it with as well, what scenarios and which of those are supported by Microsoft. And finally, we're going to just quickly talk about the pricing, just because I know sometimes with Azure one of the more confusing elements is the pricing around it. So we're going to really make that crystal clear to you. It's, to be fair, Azure Site Recovery is one of the much easier products to price. So we'll clear that up for you, and we'll do a quick working example just to show you exactly how you would price your own scenario to see what it would cost you to make use of this product. So we'll get started. First of all, let's take a look at quite a typical scenario. So we've got a couple of offices where we've got our users, we've got some remote users, and we've got our primary data center, which can either be an actual data center of our own, a rented data center from another supplier, or it could actually be a server room or a server cabinet within our own premises, so either within one of our offices where we've got users as well. But for the purpose of this, we'll just describe it as our primary data center. Typically, we have all of these sites and our remote users connected using different technologies. Probably most popular is either an MPLS network or site-to-site VPNs or client VPN, the remote users scenario. And all of these users will access the primary data center for servers and different services, either file servers, applications, databases, exchange, email systems, lots of different reasons, voice over IP, all sorts of different systems that our business needs to function. So because of the critical nature of all these applications and these functions, we introduce something called replication. And we've used this, a lot of people watching this now will be familiar with this. We would replicate all of our core and important applications and servers over to a disaster recovery data center, which might be again another one of our sites, an actual data center of our own, or a rented data center from a provider. So if our primary data center went down, we would fail over all of our resources to our disaster recovery data center because they'd be replicating at different sort of intervals, and we would get all of our sites to route again straight to our disaster recovery data center. So then they would continue to work from there. Quite a typical scenario. There'll be some variation on the specifics, but high level, that's quite typical. So just want to talk about a couple of the challenges that we've encountered with customers when we've been discussing these type of scenarios with my own experience. And firstly is, I think the biggest is cost. It's cost sort of versus return really. With a disaster recovery data center, ideally we never want to use it, and if we be quite honest, we rarely do use it. But it is really important that we have it there because it's critical that for those times where we do have an outage, we have a DR plan in place. So I think a lot of the time it can be quite a wasted investment, because to build this disaster recovery data center is generally really expensive, because we need to buy the same amount of hardware that we've used in the primary data center. That's hardly ever going to be used as well in there. So we need to purchase all the hardware, licenses. We need to maintain this system as well, and obviously all the physical infrastructure, power, cabinets, data center fees if that's applicable. All of these are there, and we have to pay for all of this, as well as the actual replication software and technology to perform the replication. And there's generally a bit of a feel of we've invested a lot of money here for something that we're rarely using. But again, we don't want to play down the significance of it, because it is actually really important that we have this in place. So just going to move on to Azure Site Recovery and how it sort of differs. And same scenario, two offices we've got here with some remote users, our primary data center, all connected in this case by site-to-site VPN. The difference is what we're doing in this scenario is all our servers in our primary data center will be using Azure Site Recovery to perform live replication if we want that, or different intervals that we choose depending on different factors such as bandwidth that we can choose. We can have a live replication every 30 seconds, 5 minutes, or 15 minutes. So that's the frequency of the replication. But this time we are going to be replicating to the Microsoft Azure cloud platform into our own sort of segregated private network within the platform. So all our machines are replicating, and if our primary data center went down, all of those replicated machines would be booted up within the Microsoft Azure cloud platform. And what that would mean then is that all of our sites can have a site-to-site VPN connection. They can have this in place already, like simultaneously as at the same time as the primary data center. So it means that we don't need to do any manual sort of configuration failover. So the failover process with Azure Site Recovery is as simple as pushing a button that says failover on it in the Azure portal, and it will basically make our servers in Azure primary and bring up all these copies of the servers online into Azure, and all of our sites will start routing straight to the Azure data center, and our users are back online usually within 10-15 minutes sort of maximum, really. Basically, as long as it takes to boot up a virtual machine, that's how long it'll take for our users to get back online. The really key sort of point to make around this solution is the fact that you only pay for a replication service, so you pay a fee per server to actually replicate your virtual machines or your physical servers to Azure, and you don't pay for the compute resource, so the equivalent to paying for the actual servers, until you actually fail over to Azure. So, for example, if your primary data center failed, you failed over to Azure for 2 days, you would only pay for the machines to run for 2 days, and then you would fail back over. So there's a bit more of the cost makes a little bit more sense because you're only paying for the compute and for the running power of the machines when you're actually using them, which again is hopefully never and usually is very rarely. So that's how it would work. The solution when we fail back to our primary data center, it's a simple button to say fail back, and Azure will take care of this process. The Azure Site Recovery sort of suite will take care of this, and it will actually replicate our machines back to our on-premise data center, shut down the copies in Microsoft Azure, and then bring them back online our primary data center, and our users will all start routing back there. The machines in Azure are now shut down, so they're no longer incurring the charges for running the machines. So you can see it's a much more efficient solution, and it's a very quick, seamless solution in terms of the failover. The next thing I just want to quickly talk about is the technologies that are compatible and supported by Microsoft with Azure Site Recovery. So Hyper-V, which I'm sure you'd expect to be on there, being a Microsoft product as well, is the easiest one to implement because you don't need any additional virtual machines to provide any conversion or anything. You literally just install agents on the host, decide which virtual machines you'd like to sort of set up for the replication, and they'll start replicating to Azure, and they'll be online there. VMware is also a fully Microsoft supported solution for Azure Site Recovery. The only difference is that you would need to build a virtual machine on premise to provide the conversion process, to basically make the machines compatible with the Azure sort of platform when you need to fail over. And again, physical servers as well, which is a massive plus for this solution, because a lot of the replication solutions out there are exclusive to virtual machines only, whereas the Azure Site Recovery will replicate your physical servers and bring them online as a virtual machine in the Microsoft Azure platform if you did need to fail them over. Again, the physical service does need a virtual machine on site to provide that conversion from physical to Azure for the replication process, but that's the only sort of additional step you would need to take to set this up. What scenarios are supported? So first of all, the one that we've discussed, which is on-premise machines, on-premise data center, replicating to Azure and bringing them online at the Microsoft Azure data center. Again, quite a standard scenario. That's the most typical one that I used here. But Microsoft also supports you having two sites. So like we discussed in the initial scenario, if you've got two offices where you've got the disaster recovery, the hardware in both offices to do this, Azure will basically provide the Azure Site Recovery service to orchestrate the replication, to perform the replication between your own two sites or your own two data centers, and to control the failover and the failback, all from the cloud, without actually replicating your machines to Azure. So it's a reduced fee for that service, but it's a really useful service if you've already got the physical capabilities, the resources in both your sites, but you haven't got the software to seamlessly perform that disaster recovery sort of element for you. And the final scenario, which is currently in public preview in Azure, is the Azure to Azure site recovery. So we might have 5 virtual machines in, say, North Europe data center for Azure. If that data center went down, or Microsoft had a big issue in that data center, then we can basically be replicating those machines all the time to another region within Azure. So that could be, for example, North Europe replicating to the UK. North Europe goes down, Microsoft has a big issue, we bring our machines online in the UK, and our users get back up and running. So those are all the support technologies and all support scenarios. Now I'd just like to discuss the pricing model. Azure Site Recovery has 2 associated costs with it directly. The first is the replication service itself, and that is on a per virtual machine basis. Currently that price is at £18.64 in the UK to basically replicate a virtual machine to the Azure data center. If you want to use the replication service between 2 of your own sites, it's approximately £11 per virtual machine. The only additional cost is the storage cost as well. So when you're replicating your virtual machine from on-premise to Azure, obviously that storage is being used to store the machine ready for when you want to do some disaster recovery or want to fail over, and you pay for that as well. I'm sure anyone who's familiar with Azure will know that the storage is probably the least expensive product that they offer. So it's not really a big issue. So let's just have a quick look at a pricing example. If we had 2 virtual machines and both those machines had the same spec, they both had 2 cores, 7 gigs of RAM each, and a 250 gig hard drive each. We'd have to pay for 2 replication services to Azure, which is again £18.64, times it by 2 gives us the £37.28 per month. If we use the Azure pricing calculator, which is publicly available on the Microsoft website, you get the cost for 500 gig storage, which shows £8.20 per month, and that gives us our total cost for replication and the storage associated with it to make sure that we can actually perform the DR at £45.48 per month. So that scenario there is just to give you an idea of how you would price it yourself. If you want to use the Microsoft Azure pricing calculator and look at the virtual machine costs, you can then get an idea for how much it would actually cost if you did fail over, say, per day or per week, to give you a sort of projection of budget that you would need to sort of set aside for that scenario if needs be. That's Azure Site Recovery. If you've got any questions around the solution, about pricing the solution, or technical questions around the solution, we're very familiar with the solution here at Circle Cloud, so we'll be happy to sort of provide the advice or any discussions you want to have around it. By all means, get in touch. We've also got, if people would like to move test it or even implement it themselves, we're going to be sort of creating some videos, which I'll post some links just after these slides too, where it will we'll show you how to set the solution up for yourself, so you can get this up and running, get it working, either for a proof of concept or for your final solution. Again, any questions, please get in touch. Thank you very much for watching.